Hello again. Peter Saturday from Universal Dork back today to talk about Thanksgiving-themed horror. This is a genre of horror film that does not have a lot of installments. And I've been thinking about this for the past month and decided to come up with 4 or 5 recommendations of Thanksgiving-themed terror that you might want to check out this year. So, if you're getting together with family and friends, you could always sneak these into the equation of Thanksgiving-themed viewing between like planes, trains, and automobiles, or whatever it is that you like watching. If it's a horror film with some Thanksgiving in there, I can always justify watching it with people. So I like to do that. And, there's not a lot of choices. We had Eli Roth came out. Was that last year? He came out with Thanksgiving, a movie that was the actual film version of that trailer that he originally put at the beginning of the Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez double feature. Now, I still haven't seen that film. I've been a little bit not that into Eli Roth over the years. So I have heard some good stuff about Thanksgiving, the film. So this year I do intend on checking that out and giving it a chance because it sounds like it's some sort of kind of like Scream style slasher film, whodunit, kind of reminiscent of maybe like the original My Bloody Valentine. And that sounds pretty cool to me. We'll see about that. I'm very interested. I'm going to go into it with an open mind. Aside from that, the go-to 80s horror movie that everyone talks about now that's sort of got a bigger cult following is Blood Rage from 1987. Well, this year I've got a couple recommendations here that I think you can kind of get cozy after you fill your belly, and maybe you're going to stay home this year. I mean, who wants to really hang out with the family after, an election year? So if you're going to just sort of chill out or come home early and watch movies like I plan to do, I've got some good ones here for you. So the first up is a short film that you could watch, or an episode actually, of this series called
Bone Chillers.
And this one is called Franken Turkey. So I've got the VHS right here. It's got a really rad cover, and it features another episode on there called Full Moon Goon. You get 2 of them on here, and I'll have to see if Franken Turkey is streaming anywhere and maybe post that at the end of the video. But this is the first time watch for me last year. So this series from 1996 had 1 season, and it was created by this guy named Adam Rifkin, who has directed some pretty interesting stuff. He did Detroit Rock City. He did The Chase with Charlie Sheen and Henry Rollins. Pretty fun movie as well. He did 1993's Psycho Cop Returns, Dark Backwards. That was a really fucking weird movie. I think Judd Nelson's in that one. I got to give that one a rewatch. And he also did a movie that I really like. I think it's from 1989 or 1990. Just got a Blu-ray release called Invisible Maniac. So he directed all of those. He directs most of the Bone Chillers. And he wrote this one with Michael McDowell, who also wrote a film called Beetlejuice. So this is a pretty cool little episode of this totally bonkers series. And better yet, it stars one of my favorites, Linda Cardellini. She is such a babe. She's in here as well. Franken Turkey delivers the fucking goods for a good, 22-minute or 25-minute short to open up a Thanksgiving movie night. So basically the story here is there's these kids at this Edgar Allan Poe High, and it's Thanksgiving time, and they've got this weird principal who orders them to kill the school turkey and make it into their Thanksgiving dinner, which is highly disturbing because apparently this turkey has been hanging around for a long time. I know that a lot of schools and private schools, stuff like that, they'll butcher turkeys and stuff, but this one is not like your regular turkey. It kind of hangs out with the kids and is a pretty cool puppet type character. Basically, he orders this hit on this turkey and says,
"This thing is going to be the meal this year, whether you like it or not. You're going to butcher that damn turkey and we're all going to eat it."
Now, the kids come up with a pretty cool idea here. They decide to make a fake turkey because they want to fool the principal and at the same time save their good friend, the school turkey, which is understandable because this turkey is a pretty stand-up guy. And they put this turkey together sort of like a Franken turkey, which is what this is called. So they make this fake turkey, and lo and behold, it gets hit by lightning and reanimates. So this sort of corpse type turkey reanimates, and basically the rest of this episode is this evil turkey, Franken Turkey, running around like a goddamn maniac chicken with its head cut off. I gotta say, the practical effects and the puppetry with Franken Turkey in here are really damn good. And this is a high-octane, frenetic, Thanksgiving-themed, turkey terror-filled episode of pure mayhem. It is just nonstop. The turkey is fucking going all over the place, causing all of these problems, all over their school campus here. This thing is just balls to the wall, enraged. It's probably the best killer turkey that I've seen. There's not a lot of them. I think there was that Trauma movie. What is that one? It's escaping me right now. So with all that in mind, Franken Turkey's probably not going to freak anyone out because it is a kid's show. Like I said, it's a Goosebumps style show, but it is pretty impressive and pretty wild for what it is. I mean, remember, it was directed by Adam Rifkin, who did some pretty weird shit like Dark Backwards, directing a kid's show. You can't go wrong there. So next up, there is an episode of Tales from the Dark Side, one of my all-time favorite series. I've done another video before about Tales from the Dark Side, covering Halloween. But this time we get from the second season, I've got the DVD here, episode 19 from 1986 called The Last Car. Now this episode is not like Thanksgiving dinner going on or, an arguing family at the Thanksgiving table or killer turkeys or anything like that. This one features a girl, like a college student, who during Thanksgiving break is heading back home for the holiday to visit her family. And she decides to go on this strange train ride because it seems like it's going to be a quicker route to see her family, and it's going to be much more peaceful than all of the other trains that are packed to the gills with screaming kids and impatient travelers. So this train continues on through this pretty dismal night. It never really seems like it's making any stops for any of the other passengers aboard this long train, and it never really seems like it's approaching its destination, as they're just kind of going through darkness and strange tunnels. And along the way, she encounters some other passengers that she's sharing this ride with. She feels sort of like she's trapped in this strange dimension. And this episode is kind of a slow burn. It's a quiet and slower paced episode. Really exudes this thick sense of dread that just sort of lingers in the air. And, it doesn't have any of the kind of rubbery monsters that I love so much that normally make these episodes such a damn good time to enjoy watching. But it really doesn't need it. This one plays out more like an episode of The Twilight Zone, but it is most definitely worth a watch. Even though Tales from the Dark Side is one of my favorites and I talk about it quite a bit and hype it up, it's pretty hard to make every episode totally killer. So there are a lot of hit and misses on here, and I would put The Last Car as one of the hits. It does take place around Thanksgiving, and that is why I put this on the list for a nice little warm-up, get you right into the mood of some Thanksgiving-themed tales of terror. All right, so next up is this film from 1981. It's called Home Sweet Home. Now, the interesting thing about this is that most people attribute Blood Rage from 1987 to be the sole Thanksgiving slasher film of the 1980s. That's definitely not the case, because last year I watched this movie, Home Sweet Home, for the first time, and though it's not the best film of all time, I will definitely say, if you're a slasher fanatic and want to take a deep dive into slasher films or looking for Thanksgiving-themed horror, this one is most definitely worth a watch, especially with a group of people. I don't know if I would recommend watching Home Sweet Home all by your lonesome, because this one kind of needs a group of people to really, feed off of all of the stupid shit that's going on in it. Now, the most interesting thing about this is if you're familiar with a lot of characters and people from the 1980s, there's a guy that stars in this film named Jake Steinfeld. Now, he's better known as Body by Jake. So he's kind of this workout dude from the 1980s. He randomly appears in this fucking movie, and it is bizarre. He plays this crazed, PCP-addicted maniac who's on a rampage during Thanksgiving, and there's this annoying family out in the countryside that's getting together, a bunch of wealthy people all gathering there, and Body by Jake heads out there to basically terrorize them on Thanksgiving. It is definitely not the greatest slasher film of all time, but definitely has its fair share of mind-numbing moments that will leave you scratching your head in disbelief. Now, one of the best parts of this, besides Body by Jake, is probably one of the single most greatest characters of all time that is worth the price of admission alone here. The son of this wealthy family that is out there, he's probably, I'm guessing, somewhere between the age of 16 and 25 or 26. And his name is Mistake. That is his fucking name. He probably gave himself the name Mistake. Let's hope that his parents didn't, because this guy has just got to be seen to be believed. He's one of the more prominent characters in the film. And when he shows up, you will most undoubtedly know who I'm talking about, as he has his face painted like a mime. He's basically like a reject from the Kiss Army. Acts in the most bizarre manner, and he runs around playing air guitar, and he kind of pops in and out. It's really quite a mystery why this character was added to this film. I mean, the person that created him either needs an Academy Award nomination or to have their head examined. Not sure which. I really wanted more of this character in this film, but you get a pretty hefty dose of him, and I will say he makes this film very entertaining. And then later, some of the kills from Body by Jake, he does some pretty fucking gnarly maneuvers here to totally mangle and mess people up. Think of, say, like Lou Ferrigno all jacked the hell up on PCP, grunting and groaning, kind of like the Incredible Hulk minus the green skin. This thing is just waiting for a cult following, mainly because of the character Mistake, Body by Jake, and also because it takes place on Thanksgiving, and people love that holiday shit, including myself. So Home Sweet Home is definitely worth a watch. I think you can track that one down on YouTube, and I think that probably the VHS of this is pretty pricey. Someone needs to get with it and grab this thing and put it out soon, or maybe someone like Shudder or someone just get this thing streaming. In fact, maybe it is streaming right now. So check that shit out. Home Sweet Home from 1981. Super stupid, something that they would probably do like Mystery Science Theater or like Riff Tracks or something like that. This would be perfect to rip on with your friends after everyone's a little bit hammered after Thanksgiving and drinking way too much wine. Check that one out. All right, so my final recommendation here today for Thanksgiving-themed horror is a movie called
The Boneyard
from 1991. One of my favorites, and I'm so glad that it got a Blu-ray release from Code Red. It is a really unique film in its own right, and it takes place on Thanksgiving. It's got some really amazing, really cool monster effects in it, and it takes a little bit of time to get going because we're following this very depressed psychic woman as she's sort of investigating these child murders that have taken place, and the police department reaches out for her to help them on this particular grisly case that is causing her a lot of problems. Anyway, she reluctantly agrees to help them out, and she goes all the way out to this mortuary on Thanksgiving. She encounters some pretty interesting characters, some great character actors. Norman Fell from Three's Company, Mr. Roper, he stars in this film, and I am a gigantic fucking Three's Company fan. That is my favorite sitcom of all time. And of course, I will follow Mr. Roper anywhere he wants to go. He's in this film, and he works at the mortuary as well. And also at the front desk there is this woman, Phyllis Diller. Now, Phyllis Diller stars in this film as well. I don't know if there's a lot of Phyllis Diller fans out there. I remember her primarily when I was a kid for starring on like Scooby-Doo, which was really bizarre. And one of the things that I learned from watching the special features on this Blu-ray is something very interesting. Normally, Phyllis Diller is wearing a wig. I wouldn't even say normally, I would say all the time. Now, apparently, this is the only film that showcases her regular, real hairdo. I don't know, they put together a very strange cast. But that's honestly one of the strong points of The Boneyard, actually, is the cast. Because they're all incredibly likable characters. I mean, you've got even the lead actress, not even just Norman Fell and Phyllis Diller. There is a real sense of camaraderie here amongst the people that actually have to get together, join forces, and fight their way through the evils of this Thanksgiving night in this fucking bizarre mortuary. This film is most known for the monsters that they encounter, and boy, do they encounter some great ones. There's some really cool shit that goes on in here. Once the plot really gets rolling and they get to the mortuary, everything before that is fine. It just don't expect it to be like all out Evil Dead right at the start, though it goes in some sort of kind of weird Evil Dead style moments about halfway through. Once the supernatural stuff enters the scene and really starts ramping up, there's two zombie sort of demonic children that they encounter that are really fucking well done. You also get Phyllis Diller in here, sort of minor spoiler, transforms. I mean, if you look on the back of this, you can see it. She transforms at one point into a pretty impressive monster, utilized with puppetry as well. And then, of course, if you take this Blu-ray out, this is the cover for some of the VHS and the DVD version and the Blu-ray. This is not really a spoiler, though. This is one of the best parts of this film, The Boneyard, is this mutant poodle. I shit you not. One of the best things in this film. I mean, that alone probably sold a lot of VHS covers alone back in the day. I gotta say, it sold me. When I saw this film, I had originally just seen this particular cover of the VHS. I wasn't really aware of the poodle. I had my suspicions while I was watching it that something fucked up was going to go on with the poodle, but I did in no way imagine that it would turn into something like a were-poodle. So The Boneyard is an absolute gem. It's been one of my favorite horror movies of the early 90s. It really feels like an 80s movie. Maybe it was filmed in the 1980s, but this one delivers on all fronts here. This is exactly the type of horror movie that I love. So The Boneyard has flown under the radar for many years until Code Red released this Blu-ray. I'm sure glad that they did, because this is most definitely going to get watched this year. I'm sure that this is streaming somewhere. If it is, I'm going to put it right up here for you to check out. Otherwise, just buy this in general. Like I said, it doesn't feature crazy Thanksgiving dinners or anything like that, or wild turkeys, but it does take place on Thanksgiving, and you can see some of the decor all around, which for me classifies this thing as a bona fide Thanksgiving tale of terror, The Boneyard. Now, lastly, there's a movie that I am going to check out this year that I have never seen before that I'm actually really fucking excited about. A movie from 1995 called The Granny. If any of you out there have seen The Granny before from 95, let me know in the comments. It looks like a really great time. It looks bonkers in the same way that The Boneyard does. So The Granny basically features a bunch of arrogant assholes getting together on Thanksgiving. Grandmother in the movie is taken for granted, and she transforms into a murderous demonic entity during Thanksgiving and goes on a complete rampage, slaughtering all of her asinine siblings and children and relatives. That one sounds wonderful to me. Like I said, I have not seen that before, but that is on my watch list for sure. And I had no idea that it was a Thanksgiving-themed horror film in the same vein as like Evil Dead 2 or Brain Dead or Dead Alive. In fact, it really, from watching the trailer, reminds me a lot of a movie called Rabid Grannies. That movie's great too. Rabid Grannies finally got a Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome. So that wraps it up for me with my list that I compiled this year. 5 features here you could sneak into the family viewing this year. Put in something like The Boneyard and just sit back and enjoy the ride. Have a great Thanksgiving, and like the woman in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles says, gobble, gobble.